Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm 𝐓𝐈𝐌𝐄𝐒 and on this channel I aim to help you enhance your quality of life. So the topic of this video is how I got millions of read on Wattpad. And I will be sharing with you 7 practical steps that I applied that have helped me to succeed. So for those of you that may be watching this video, you may be asking yourselves, 𝐓𝐹𝐼, what is Wattpad? Don't worry, I got you covered. So Wattpad in a nutshell is an online writing platform that has allowed millions of authors or writers to share their stories on the platform, and by doing so, it allows them to grow a readership over time. But wait, there's more. Some of the stories that have been published on Wattpad from writers across the globe have been published in the physical realm, and also their stories ended up being adapted into movies. So if you're an aspiring writer and you're not so keen about the whole online writing thing, I recommend that you give it another thought, because by publishing your stories online, it allows your books to gain exposure and to attract new readers from across the globe. So to give a bit of a context before I give practical steps that helped me to grow as a writer, I started my journey in creative writing on Wattpad since I was the age of 16 after my sister introduced me to the platform. So on Wattpad, I am the author of some of my most popular books, including 𝐓𝐹𝐼𝐌𝐄𝐒 Twice Shame on Me, which is a teen fiction novel, and The Billionaire is an Ice Queen, which is catered towards an older audience, and it is a romance and mystery book. So quick disclaimer before I start. By no means am I an expert in writing. I am still growing and learning so much more as a writer. And I also want to emphasize that my journey to gaining millions of reads on my books didn't happen overnight. This is something that took me years to accomplish. So if you're an aspiring writer watching this video and you're thinking about applying some of the tips that I will share, please keep in mind that it's not something that will happen overnight. It is possible, but you have to be patient, dedicated, and consistent if you want to see results. I'm hoping that through the tips that I share with you and through some of the mistakes I made and some of the things that I learned, it can help you in your journey so that you don't repeat the same mistakes that I made. So now that we're clear with the disclaimer, let's get straight into this video. So the first tip that I would like to share with you is to read a lot of books. I go by the principle that before you're a writer, you're a reader. And reading a lot of books, there's no way around it. It allows you to discover your writing style. Because when you're reading so many books from different authors, you're able to understand what you like as a reader and what you don't like as a reader. And by reading so many books, you're able to also fool your creative flow so that when you are writing your story, it lays that foundation for you to craft characters and a fictional universe to be able to develop your story in the way that you want to. But before you can even do that, you need to read a lot of books, right? And also, reading a lot of books, it undoubtedly allows you to get better at writing and to expand your vocabulary. There's no way around it. And the thing is, for example, when I first started writing on Wattpad at the age of 16, I noticed over the years that I significantly improved in writing because I kept at it. I was consistent. When I initially started, my writing sucked, to say the least. And as I kept going, as I kept reading other books, as I kept discovering my writing style, some of my likes and some of my dislikes in writing and reading, I was able to develop my own taste in writing. And as a result, it allowed me to write my stories. The second tip is to ensure that your book cover is attractive. Sorry to say this, but people do judge a book by its cover. You can write the most captivating storyline, but if that gets overshadowed by an unappealing book cover, then you're not setting yourself up for success. So it's really important that you invest in designing your book cover. And let's say that you're not really good at designing book covers, then invest in a graphic designer. You can pay a graphic designer to design your book cover and increase your chances of attracting readers to click on your book or at least read the first chapter. The thing that you want to keep in mind is that people are generally attracted to beautiful things, right? So when you have a book cover that stands out and that is well designed, then automatically it's going to attract readers to click on your story out of curiosity. So a general rule of thumb also is to make sure that if you are interested in designing your own book cover, then make sure that if your background image of the book is of a darker shade, then make sure that your title is able to contrast well with that color, right? So, give an example. As you can see, for my current book cover for 𝐓𝐈𝐌𝐄𝐒𝐓𝐈𝐍𝐆, the image is dark and the color of the title that I chose is of a lighter color, white, to make sure that it contrasts well with the background color image. If, let's say, I decided to change the color of the title to a color such as red, automatically you see that it doesn't really harmonize well with the color of the background image, right? So, by the way, I can't change the color of the other sentences because I generated them from another website and they're images. But as you can see in what I'm doing right now is that changing the color to red, it doesn't really harmonize well with the image of the background of my book cover. That is why I chose white. And you can also apply this for another example. As you can see here, this is a book cover that I used for my first book, Fool Me Twice, a long time ago. And the background, the image is of a lighter shade. So as a result, to contrast with the background, I used the color dark brown, right? So that both the title and the images can harmonize well. If I decided to change the color of the title to a color such as yellow, well, as you can see, it doesn't really harmonize well with the background, and it's going to be hard for readers to pinpoint what the title says because it's of such a light color against a light background that nothing is harmonizing at this point. So I hope that you get the point. If you decide to have a book cover and let's say your image is dark, make sure that you're using universal colors for your title, such as white. And if it's the reverse, if let's say your background is of a lighter image, then make sure that the title is dark, of a darker color. So some of the resources that I used to design my book covers are Canva. Canva is my go-to to design my book covers, and I believe they offer a free version, and there's also a paid version as well. And also for my fonts, I generally use the fonts that are available on Canva on the paid version, but I also used to use a lot fontmeme.com, which offers a variety of fonts that could be of use to you. To gain free royalty images, I also used unsplash.com, and it's been such a game changer when you're able to gain free royalty images because it elevates your book cover and it makes them look more professional. So tip number 3, you want to make sure that you have a captivating summary. So this tip goes hand in hand with making sure that you have an attractive cover. Let's say you have an attractive cover, but the reader clicks on your story and you don't have an intriguing summary, then you're not going to retain the reader's attention. It's very important that when you are trying to publish your story, especially on Wattpad, make sure that you have an intriguing storyline from the onset. Think of it like this. Let's say you had 3 seconds to capture a person's attention. What would you do? Well, I'm thinking that you would want to do anything in your power to make sure that you are able to retain their attention with whatever presentation or product you want to show them. It's kind of the same way when you're writing a book online. The first few seconds are so critical to gaining a reader's attention, especially when they don't really know what your book is about, and you this is an opportunity for them to click on your story and discover what it's about, or just by not having an attractive book cover and an attractive summary, you end up losing a potential loyal reader. So it's very, very important that the first impression they get is positive so that your readers can be captivated enough to read your story in the long term. So, one way to retain your reader's attention is to insert an excerpt of your story in the summary. So, for example, as you can see here from my first book, 𝐓𝐈𝐌𝐄𝐒𝐓𝐈𝐍𝐆, I included an excerpt which showcases a dialogue between my two main characters. And after doing that, I ended up sharing the overview of my story. So, just by sharing this excerpt, it makes the reader want to be curious about what's going on with the characters, why are they hating each other this much, and it triggers the reader to want to click on my story. I also did the same thing with my other book, The Billionaire is an Ice Queen. Rather than even including an overview, I just included an excerpt straight up in the summary section. And I didn't even need to describe what the story is about. And because the excerpt is very mysterious, we don't really know what the characters are talking about, then it wants to intrigue the reader enough to click on my story. So it's the exact same way. If you are writing an online story and you want to capture the attention of your readers in the first 3 seconds, put on the best description ever. You don't even need to include an excerpt, but just make sure that the summary is very intriguing so that it can lure your reader. So tip number 4 is to join book clubs. When you join book clubs, it's a great opportunity to gain constructive feedback. Usually on book clubs, what happens is you get paired up with somebody else and you're both assigned with the task of reading each other's books and providing constructive feedback on how the other person can improve the quality of their book. One of the things I really like about book clubs as well on Wattpad is that it helps you to gain objective feedback. Because let's face it, we each have subjective views about our book, and these subjective views are not always founded on reality. So by having somebody else to criticize our book or give constructive feedback, it allows us to see those blind spots that we didn't see when we were writing our story. And the thing is, joining book clubs also allows you to gain free comments, and it can also help you to stand out in the algorithm, right? So I highly recommend you join book clubs. And one way you can find book clubs on Wattpad is you go to the browsing section and then you click on the search bar and you type book club open. Once you enter, you will be shown a variety of book clubs that are currently open, and based on your interest, it is up to you to register on the book club that you like. But before you register, I really recommend that you read the rules of the book clubs, because if you don't follow their rules, then there's a high chance you will be removed from the book club. So just make sure you're doing your dutiful duty as a reader and writer, and follow the rules so that you can participate in this type of book club activities. And that's what I did. When I first started on Wattpad, I joined book clubs, and joining book clubs was such a helpful way for me to gain feedback, constructive feedback from other people, and grow as a writer. So tip number 5 is to write relatable characters. Writing relatable characters is one of the ways to gain loyal readers over time. And the thing is, if you're writing about characters that have zero flaws, that don't face challenging events in their lives, it's going to be very hard for you to retain the attention of your readers as the story progresses. So it's very important and pivotal that, like, when you're writing your story, make sure that your characters are going through very challenging moments and they have flaws. And one way to also write relatable characters is to make them go through character development. And by doing that, you are able to show readers that your characters, even if initially they had their flaws, they were able to learn from those mistakes, and it ended up causing them to grow as a character. So let's say, for example, your main character is like a mean jerk who exploit other people for his own gain, then show that the character is not going to be the exact same person he was from the beginning to the end. There has to have been like a pivotal moment in his life that caused him to change the way he treats other people and grow as a character. So that's what character development is about. It's very important to make your characters grow with your readers. Even if, let's say, you're writing a fantasy story, you want to also demonstrate character development and also demonstrate relatable characters by making these characters face very challenging events, because it would allow the characters to want to put themselves in the shoe of the main character, even if you're in some dystopian fantasy world. One author that does this so well, that has written relatable characters, is the author Chu Jang. I'm going to show for that wrote the story Solo Leveling. So this is it, if you can see. So I'm currently reading this book because it's a masterpiece, because the author does such a great job at portraying a main character that goes from being a zero to a hero, and he has undergone such a transformational journey throughout his like life. And in this fantasy book, the reader feels like they want to put themselves in the shoe of the main character. The character faces a near death experience, and after that, he ends up changing and growing. And the reader, like, you can't help as a reader but want to grow with the main character and learn from his inspiring adventures. And that's exactly what the author has been able to do very, very well in Solo Leveling. And when you're writing a story and you want to write relatable characters, please make sure that your characters are relatable, and it's a character that readers they need to know how the journey of the main character ends. So I really recommend Solo Leveling for those of you who are curious about how to write a pacing of character and how to write relatable characters as well. So tip number 6 is don't take a long hiatus. So this is one of the mistakes that I made when I first started writing my first book on Wattpad. I noticed that there was a point when I was writing my book where I was getting a lot of engagement from readers, and then I decided to take a long hiatus that almost lasted more than 3 years. And over the years, the readers that I gained ended up losing interest and giving up on the book. And when by the time I came back to complete the story almost 3 years later, I had to almost start from scratch to build my readership again and attract new readers, because the readers I had prior, a lot of them, they ended up giving up on my story. So it's kind of the same thing when you're writing a story and you take long hiatuses, you're not really consistent with your updating schedule. You end up, even if you ended up attracting readers to your story, if you're not consistent with updates, you're going to lose readers over time. Or not that you will lose readers, but it will cause the number of reads of your book over time to stagnate. And that's something that I noticed for my current ongoing book, The Billionaire is an Ice Queen. At the time when I was publishing new chapters regularly, I noticed that engagement was stable. But when I took a long hiatus, and for good reason, right? I had to complete my master's and I was also working full time. So I had no time whatsoever to be writing my story. I noticed that the engagement or the number of read I would get, it kind of stagnated. So don't make the same mistakes I made, right? If you are an aspiring writer and you have free time to write new chapters and you're really passionate about writing, then stick to a consistent and clear schedule. And I understand sometimes life happens. Sometimes you can be caught up in so many things. You may have other responsibilities in your life that are not allowing you to publish on a regular basis, and that's fine. By no means am I saying that you need to publish new stories. And by the way, you also have to keep in mind that you don't owe your readers anything. Sometimes I think readers, they think that the authors and writers owe them something. That's not really the case. People have lives and it's not always about writing. But if you know that you have free time and you could take that free time to be writing your story, especially if you know that your readers are desperate to know what happens next, and let's say you left your chapter on a cliffhanger, then don't leave your readers hanging. Make sure that you're updating regularly so that it increases your likelihood of sustaining your readership and growing your readership over time. So, tip number 7 is to complete your book. Nothing prepares you for the level of satisfaction and fulfillment you get as a writer when you complete your book. The feeling is priceless. And that's how I felt when I completed my first book. So, the thing is, when you are on Wattpad and you're writing your story, you are more likely to gain more reads because on Wattpad, a lot of readers, they don't like to read incomplete books. They really don't. They don't like to be left on a cliffhanger and they want to read a finished book. And that sounds fair, right? So when you are not completing your book, even if you will attract readers, the possibility of attracting more readers isn't there because you did not complete your book. And I noticed that when I took a long hiatus for my first book, 𝐓𝐈𝐌𝐄𝐒𝐓𝐈𝐍𝐵, Shame on Me, I noticed that, like I said, when I was on hiatus, the number of views for my story was stagnant. But when I came back to complete the book in 2019, I noticed that at the time, my views for the book was around 2.9 million to 3.1 million reads. And that increased because I came back to complete it at the time. And I noticed that over the years, after I completed the book, the number of reads I got on the book more than tripled over the years. So that is testament to how readers on Wattpad are more committed to finishing completed books than reading books that are incomplete. I really recommend that if you're writing a story and you haven't completed it, please commit to it, complete it. And I know completing a book, it's one of the hardest things you ever do as a writer. Heck, it took me years to finish my first book. But the feeling of satisfaction you get from completing that story and also gaining new readers, it's priceless. So now that you've made it to the end of this video, I hope that the tips I shared with you on how I grew as a writer on Wattpad were of help to you. And now that you've also made it to the end of this video, I want to be sharing with you writing resources that helped me in my journey as a writer to improve my writing over time. And I'll be leaving links of these writing resources in the description of this video, so please go and check them out. Could be helpful to you. And the links that I will share with you, they are writing techniques on how to, let's say, describe the facial expressions of characters or how to describe the tone of voice of your characters. I have been using these links for many years and they are game changers. So go check them out if you want to improve in writing. I also want to say that if you're an aspiring writer and you're feeling unmotivated or you're feeling not inspired because you're getting low engagement on your stories online, or let's say, for example, you're not really an online writer, but you are struggling to get your stories published by or finding a publisher, I'm here to tell you to not give up. Keep writing, keep going, and you're bound to find your readers. But in order for your readers or your publisher to find you, you need to get better at writing and you need to keep being consistent and to not stop. Because the more you get better at writing, you're bound to find readers or attract readers that would want to read your stories and they will want to root for your characters. But before you can do that, you need to keep practicing, keep reading, keep writing. That is the best advice I can give to you at this moment. Wishing you all the best of luck in your writing journey. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.